Welcome to today's tutorial where the focus will be on the Paleolithic Age. Historians call the early period of human history the Stone Age. They do this because it was the time when people used stone to make tools and weapons. The earliest part of this period was the Paleolithic Age. In Greek, Paleolithic means old stone. It is also called Old Stone Age, which referred to the time period in the ancient world that gave humans the tools needed to advance society, as these tools were used to meet the basic needs of food, shelter, and clothing. In this tutorial, you will learn about the Paleolithic Age, what happened during this period, and what the most important developments of this time were. The major developments of the Paleolithic era centered on stone. During the Paleolithic era, stone was used to create tools and artwork. It is by far the longest era and was in essence the age of the human evolution. There are three major eras within this old Stone Age. The Lower Paleolithic Age, which began about 2.5 million years ago and lasted until 150 years ago. The Middle Paleolithic Age, which began about 150,000 years ago and lasted until 40,000 years ago. And the Upper Paleolithic Age, which began about 40,000 years ago and lasted until 10,000 BCE. These eras was marked with continually more advanced technological developments. Remember, when we talk about the developments of this era, they may seem very basic compared to modern times. However, keep in mind that these inventions drastically change the way people live. The tools in the Lower Paleolithic Age were very basic stone tools. The two major examples of tools from this period were tools used to chop and the hand axe. Chopping tools were used by Homo erectus and could be made of wood, stone, or animal bone. With this invention, people were able to use something other than their hands to cut up materials. During the Middle and Upper Paleolithic eras, religious and spiritual artworks began to emerge. Also, they created a crude type of constructed shelters and fashioned simple stone tools. In the Upper Paleolithic periods, they also made tools with wood, bone, leather, and even vegetable fiber. The world was different in the whole Stone Age from our modern world. The Earth's climate was very different. The world was a much colder place to live and than our modern world. While herds of animals roamed the land in search of food, which was scarce at that time. In order for the Stone Age people to survive, they had to move with these herds of animals, and so they lived a nomadic lifestyle. They built temporary homes and traveled in small groups of bands of about 20 or 30 members in order to survive. Try to imagine what life was like during the Paleolithic Age. Think about living in a time long before any roads, farms, or villages existed. It must have been very hard, but these people survived by hunting and gathering. The search for food was their main activity, and it was often difficult because they had to learn which animals to hunt and which plants to eat. Paleolithic people hunted buffalo, wild goats, reindeer, and other animals, depending on where they lived. Along coastal areas, they fished. They also gathered wild nuts, berries, fruits, wild grains, and green plants. The women stayed close to the camp, which was often located near a stream or other body of water. They looked after the children and searched nearby woods and meadows for berries, nuts, and grains. Everyone worked to find food because it was the key to the group's survival. On the other hand, the men were the ones who hunted large animals. They often had to search far from their camp. They had to study and learn how animals behave and how to hunt them. So they had to develop tracking methods. At first, they used clubs or drove the animals off cliffs to kill them. However, over time, they developed tools and weapons to help them hunt. The traps and spears they made increased their chances of killing their prey.
Leads us to the invention of tools. The methods the Paleolithic people used to hunt and gather their food were part of their culture, as were the tools they used. Technology tools and methods to perform tasks was first used by them. Before this time, sticks, stones, and tree branches served as tools. Later, people made devices from a hard stone called flint. Have you ever imagined how difficult it would be to prepare or eat food without a cutting tool? These people learned that by hitting flint with another hard stone, the flint would flake into pieces. These pieces had very sharp edges that could be used for cutting. Hand axes, for example, were large pieces of flint tied to wooden poles. Flint technology was a major breakthrough for early peoples. Over time, early people made better, more complex tools. By flaking, they could sharpen spear and arrow tips to hunt prey. Spears and bows and arrows made killing large animals easier. Harpoons or spears with sharp points and fish hooks increased the number of fish caught. They used sharp edged tools to cut up plants and dig roots. They used scraping tools to clean animal hides, which they used for clothing and shelter. By the end of the Paleolithic Age, people were making smaller and sharper tools, and flaking was one of the first uses of technology.
They also crafted needles from animal bones to make nets and baskets and to sew hides together for clothing. This technology had a far reaching effect. It drove the development of more advanced farming tools and influenced where people settled. The climate affected how Paleolithic people lived. Some of them lived in cold climates and made clothing from animal skins to stay warm. They sought protection in available natural shelters, such as caves and rocks and overhangs. Remember, there were no houses or apartment buildings during this time. Gradually, humans learned to make their own shelters. People constructed tents and huts of animal skins, brush, and wood in very cold climates. Some people made shelters from ice and snow in regions where wood was scarce. They used the large bones from dead woolly mammoths or hairy elephant like animals to build frames for shelters. They then covered the bones with animal hides. Those living in warmer climates, on the other hand, needed little clothing or shelter. For the purposes of safety and comfort. However, many live in caves and huts. These shelters provided protection against attacks by large animals.
Life became less difficult for Paleolithic people once they discovered how to make fire. They learned that a certain stone, iron pyrite, gave off fire when struck against the rock, and then the sparks would then ignite dry grass or leaves. That by rubbing two pieces of wood also together, the wood became heated and charred.
When the wood became hot enough, it caught fire. People learned that fire provided warmth in cold caves. It provided light when it was dark and could be used to scare away wild animals. Armed with spear, hunters could also use fire to chase animals from bushes to be killed. Eventually, people gathered around fires to share stories and to cook. Cooked food they discovered tasted better and was easier to chew and digest. In addition, meat that was smoked by fire did not have to be eaten right away and could be stored. They continued to rub wood together and eventually developed drill like wooden tools to start fires. Language was perhaps the most important innovation of the Paleolithic era. Up until this time, early people communicated through sounds and physical gestures. Scientists can infer the early use of language from the fact that humans traversed large swaths of land, established settlements, created tools, traded and instituted social hierarchies and cultures without the aid of language. These things would likely have been impossible as they would not be able to express themselves words for the same reasons we do. As we use language to communicate information and emotions, language made it easier for them to work together and to pass on knowledge. The spoken language of the Paleolithic people was constantly growing and changing. Now, technology and more complicated experiences, for example, required new words. The historical records shows that language allowed for people increasingly complex social structures with an enhanced capacity for deliberation, morality, spirituality, and meaning making. Work such as cave painting and portable art demonstrates creativity and group structures as well. They crush yellow, black, and red rocks and combine them with animal fat to make their paints. They use twigs and their fingerprints to apply these paints to the rock walls. They later use brushes made from animal hair. Early people created scenes of lions, oxen, panthers, and other animals. Few humans, however, appear in these paintings. They show an interest in sharing knowledge, expressing feelings, and transmitting cultural information to later generations. Through artwork from over 35,000 years ago is rare. There is ample evidence of cave paintings and statues from later period. As the Paleolithic era transitioned to the Mesolithic era, the Ice Age was ending. Climates were warming, so other forms of food were becoming available. For the first time, these people were able to enjoy fruit like grapes. Imagine the thrill of tasting a grape for the first time. The Paleolithic people developed a culture with the development of language. The preceding presentation was aired in time allowed for the Paleolithic Age broadcast.